In wartime India, the cruelest sound wasn't a bomb, it was a lecture. While people searched for rice, the empire rolled out posters and newsreels telling them to be brave, to be disciplined, to sacrifice. Imagine being so hungry you feel dizzy standing up, and then being told your hunger is patriotic. That's the nightmare contradiction at the heart of Bengal in 1943, the state selling duty while a province breaks apart from famine. This isn't a story about bad luck or a single bad season. It's a story about what happens when slogans become louder than empty kitchens, and when ordinary people finally stop believing the screen and start believing their own eyes. And that contradiction plays out on one ordinary night in Calcutta, December 20th, 1942, when a propaganda film is still praising unity, just as the sirens begin. A projector hums to life in a hall that smells like kerosene and damp canvas. On the screen, a title flares up. A warm, confident voice begins, "India unites for victory." A man a couple of rows back taps his friend with a rolled-up programme. He whispers that he saw this same film last week in the bazaar, but he keeps watching anyway. The screen shows farmers loading sacks, soldiers grinning as they board trains. On screen, huge letters, sacrifice. Then the first siren cuts through the narration. Someone shouts, blackout. Doors bang open. People spill into the street. Wardens run past with their palms held low, telling people to stay calm. A tram screams on its rails until the driver cuts the power and lets it coast. Inside the hall, the projector keeps chattering to a room that's suddenly full of empty chairs. The second siren starts. People move faster now. By the time searchlights rake across the sky, a boy has yanked down a shutter over the shelter door. His forehead presses to the wood. He listens to his mother counting the children. 5, 4. Where's your sister? The first explosions hit. Dust trickles down from the ceiling in the shelter under the post office. The boy smells iodine. He tastes ash. The message said unity. What he hears is bombs. The projector will be back tomorrow. It'll speak in 5 different languages, playing in more than 1,000 halls and town squares. But on this night, the boy's ribs have learned something the script never mentioned. The wall shakes if you press on the wrong place. Now fast forward to mid to late 1943. A village in Bengal. Januna Perkayeth is 9 years old. Her father carries her across a cracked field toward the train track coming into view. She can hear his breath getting shorter as the platform grows closer. It's already crowded. A man clutches a brass pot as if it's the last thing holding his life together. Someone shouts that the 7 o'clock train is coming. The crowd surges forward without really moving. When the train arrives, boys are running along the roof, banging the metal with sticks. Inside, it's boiled grain heat that clings to your skin. Januna's father lifts her through the window, then climbs in and wedges them both against the wall. Januna counts without meaning to, 3 women near her. 2 men at the door, a baby pressed to its mother's chest. The baby is quiet, too quiet. The mother's eyes blink slowly. Like each blink is effort. The train jolts. The tin roof chatters like teeth. In this carriage, sacrifice doesn't mean a poster slogan. It means a bracelet, a bowl, earrings folded into a handkerchief, traded for a handful of rice, then another. A man reaches into a cloth bag and pulls out 2 potatoes the size of his knuckles. He gives one to a stranger. The woman with the baby tries to swallow and can't. A girl near the window cups her palm in what's not quite rain, just wet, thrown up from the tracks after the night before. When the train slows at a junction, something shifts. The mother licks her finger and touches the baby's lip. Nothing. She presses again, as if there is a secret switch that might bring him back. The man by the door lowers his head. The whole carriage goes quiet. Someone whispers a prayer. A boy stares at the ceiling and taps the brass rail 3 times, then stops, afraid even sound might disturb the fragile balance of the moment. By the time they roll into Calcutta, the city runs on lines, tram lines, ration lines, relief kitchen lines that run out before noon. On a wall, a poster says, "Save food, serve the nation." A child stumbles past and reads 2 words out loud, proud to know the letters. Then he sees a body on the pavement and forgets the rest of the sentence. Zebonessa Care is another child in the same city. She'll remember that the bodies looked like the children she knew. People step around them the way you'd step around a puddle because the adults keep saying, "Don't get your shoes dirty." The posters talk about saving food. The street talks about having none. Meanwhile, the projector keeps coming back. Every week, a new reel arrives. Sometimes the exact same one as last week. It plays in 5 languages: Hindustani, English, Tamil, Bengali, Telugu. About 1,400 screens show it. Big city theatres with ceiling fans, small halls with rough wooden benches. 75 mobile vans carry films to villages where any blank wall can be a screen. The machine is working exactly as designed. Then one editor decides to stop pretending that doesn't matter. August 22nd, 1943, in Calcutta. Ian Stevens at the Statesman lays out photographs of famine on pages that people literally can't ignore. In the morning, bundles of newspapers go out like a river of paper to tea stalls and bus stops. Vendors shout, people stop in the street, the copies vanish. It's not that people didn't know, it's that they weren't allowed to look for long. Now they are. For once, a printed page is louder than a loudspeaker on a van. The films keep telling the same story about unity and shared sacrifice. The street tells a different story about hunger and loss. Famine deaths are counted in millions, somewhere between 1.5 and 3 million people. Put that next to 1,400 cinema halls. Imagine every seat filled in, every hall, night after night for months, and people still standing outside. Now imagine all of them gone. The scale of the loss is bigger than the scale of the message. For Januna, none of those big numbers matter. The only number that counts is her father's choice. 2 options: stay and watch the family starve, or climb into a metal box with strangers and hope the city has one corner where one more child can live. He chooses the train. That choice is proof the slogans are losing. When a family trusts the rails more than the ration office, the message has failed. Now jump to November 1943. Still in Calcutta, Chittaprosad Bhattacharya walks into a print shop with a folder that smells like charcoal and rain. He's thin, intense, and just back from Midnapore, with drawings you don't hang on a wall. You just try to handle them. He places the folder on the counter and slides out the first plate. A mother with eyes like empty bowls. A man with a rib cage, sharp as wire. A child whose face is down to bones and skin. The printer runs his thumb along the edge of the lino and lets out a low whistle. "You're sure?" Chittaprosad nods. The printer nods back and calls to the men in the back to warm the rollers. The pamphlet has a simple name: Hungry Bengal. It has a simple plan. Put what the newsreels leave out into the hands of people who deserve a straight look. The first copies come off the press, damp and solid. Ink settles into paper fibres. Fingers lift the sheets and leave black smudges behind. A boy stacks the pages, flipping them like cards. The printer's wife brings tea in squat glasses that burn your fingertips. For a few hours the shop hums with one rhythm: roll, press, lift, until the table is full of this one district's story. By evening, the rhythm breaks. Police arrive with a notice saying the pamphlet is prohibited. They count bundles. They take what they can reach. They ask the boy where the rest are. The printer stands straighter than he has all day and says he doesn't know, which is true in a way that makes the question feel foolish. Men carry stacks to a cart and cover them with a grey sheet. A bicycle bell rings outside. It's the most ordinary sound in the world. Nearly all 5,000 copies disappear into seizures and hiding places. That number matters because it shows 2 things at once: confidence and fear. 5,000 means someone expected readers. Almost all seized means the censors believed they could beat the clock. They couldn't. People had seen the plates. Some copies were already on their way into cupboards where, years later, someone would reach for a blanket and find a thin book hiding underneath it like a stubborn secret. One name from those pages deserves to be said: Kshetramohan Naik. In a story that uses millions as a unit, a single name pulls the conversation back into a human throat. The machine of suppression is good at its job. Censor offices read proofs. Police watch for couriers. Warehouses keep lists. The Indian News Parade stamps out about 89 prints per issue. roughly 43 in Hindustani, 26 in English, 9 in Tamil, 7 in Bengali, 4 in Telugu, so that a message can arrive everywhere at once. The state knows logistics. What it can't do anymore is fix what people see when they look up from the page and compare it to the street. Truth leaks. The state can seize paper, but it can't seize the act of seeing. Now shift to Delhi. Winter, late 1945. The Red Fort. The stone arches hold sound like a drum. Inside a colonial courtroom, 3 men stand in neat uniforms. Prem Kumar Sehgal, Shahnawaz Khan, Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon. They're officers of the Indian National Army. The indictment calls it treason. The prosecutors read long passages. The defence answers. The press scribbles notes as fast as they can. Outside, there's another kind of court, the crowd. Vendors weave between groups with brass kettles. Policemen adjust their belts and glance at the sky. Students near the gate decide to keep a chant ready. Jai Hind. 2 short words, easy to say, hard to argue with. When the gate creaks open to admit a clerk, the chant starts as a murmur and bounces off the walls until it sounds like a drumline. Names matter here. People have memorized them. Sehgal, Khan, Dhillon. The order changes depending on who's speaking. Some mouths stress Sehgal because the syllables feel familiar. Others stress Khan or Dhillon to make the 3 men stand for more than just individuals. This isn't an accident. Hindu, Muslim, Sikh. The law calls it conspiracy. The street calls it unity. Then the lathis come out. A straight line of men in khaki moves with their sticks level until they're close enough to swing. Wood hits metal first, on fences, on lampposts. Then wood hits wood as sticks clash with sticks. Sometimes wood hits bone. The charge pushes the crowd into new shapes. People fall, get up, move, surge back. A policeman trips. 2 men lift him and hand him back to his line. Inside, the judge calls for order. Outside, order has its own rules. A sister of one defendant stands near the gate with a cloth bag holding a bottle of water and a small packet of fried flatbread. She tells the man beside her she won't leave until she hears what happens. She's picked her side. She's staying. Inside that courtroom, the defence makes a point the crowd can't hear, but somehow understands anyway. Fighting for an India free to decide its own future doesn't sit neatly inside the word treason when the law itself reports to another capital. The word breaks in the air even before the verdict comes. You can measure that break on the faces of the people who came to see traitors and now look like they might offer a seat if one of the accused walked into their courtyard. This is how reputations turn, not on paper, but on pavement. 3 defendants with 3 faiths. Weeks of crowds that turn the area outside the fort into a standing appointment. One phrase, Jai Hind, that shrinks pages of legal language into 2 words a child can shout. The more the law argues, the simpler the street speaks. When verdict day comes, the chant surges like a dam opening. Baton lines rise again. A young man takes a blow on his shoulder, winces and shouts louder. A policeman thinks, just for a second, that this isn't like the other crowd control days. The courtroom tries to make a word fit. It doesn't. The street's verdict is already outrunning the state's version. Now move to Bombay. February 1946. HMIS Talwar. Early morning. Balai Chandra Dutt is in his 20s. He's a wireless telegraphist. Normally he's paid to listen and to tap out other people's words. Tonight, he's a painter. The deck is quiet. The steel under his feet is cold. His brush is cheap, and the paint is thick. He looks once over his shoulder and starts writing on the ship's skin. Quit India, he adds. Jai Hind. Paint dries slowly on cold metal. He waits long enough to know it will hold, then moves. In the morning, the letters shout in daylight. Officers do what officers do. They identify, isolate, interrogate. Dutt gets arrested and thrown into solitary. A bare room turns minutes into an enemy. The first hour, you hear noise from the docks. The second, it's only your own breathing. The third, you start calculating who will notice if your plate stays untouched. He's told to write down what he did, he can deny it, and make the ship a liar, or admit it and turn himself into the message. He signs his name under a description of his own handwriting. That line becomes a fuse. February 18th, 1946. The strike begins at Talwar and spreads outward over water like radio waves. Ratings, most of them between 17 and 24, start making their own decisions. On some ships, they refuse to cook. On others, they refuse to answer signals. They use the tools meant to keep them in line to broadcast demands and slogans instead. Jai Hind. Onshore, trucks loaded with sailors grind through traffic. Boys in navy blue grip the side rails. Someone beats a rhythm on the tailgate with a wrench. A city hears its own navy speak back. Radios and signal lamps exist for order, call signs, frequencies, traffic discipline, priority codes. The wireless room is designed to be boring, because boredom is safe. When a signalman keys a slogan into that circuit, he's not just breaking a rule, he's breaking a feeling, the feeling that wires and waves belong only to command. The equipment works whether the captain approves or not. The revolt isn't the static, it's the decision to use the line for something else. One date, February 18th, marks the start. One age range, late teens to early 20s, explains both the courage and the speed. In days, the strike reaches other ships and other cities. Not because someone drafted a flawless plan, but because the message is so simple that even a clumsy plan would have carried it. We will not play along. We will not eat. We will not be invisible. A lieutenant, good at his job, tries to talk a line of ratings into standing down. He uses the words that always worked before: duty, discipline, consequences. The men look at him, then past him, toward the truck where one of them is raising his hand to start a chant. The lieutenant understands then, not in a speech, but in a tiny shift of his expression, that the room has changed. Control lives in agreement, not in wires. And that brings us home. Years later, a small kitchen in Bengal, Kanai Haight is old enough to have grandchildren who roll their eyes when he checks the pantry twice in one afternoon. He's also the boy who once learned there might be nothing to check. The room is tidy in the way only fear can teach. Tins in one line, jars in another. Paper labels written in careful handwriting: rice, lentils, mustard oil, sugar. He taps a jar. The sound is dull and reassuring. The lid grips and then gives with a small click of metal on glass. If you ask him why, he doesn't give you a big speech. He gives you pictures. A day when the cooking pot had nothing to say, a woman trading a bracelet for a handful of grain, a neighbour who left and never came back. He says he keeps food because the word keep sits right next to the word alive in his mind. The projector's voice never lived in this room. The siren did. The smell of burnt rope did. The sound of feet on a station platform did. The chant, Jai Hind, came later and gave the street a way to talk back. But the pantry talked first. The government asked for loyalty, sacrifice, and unity. It built a machine to say those words in 5 languages across a country of hundreds of millions. It was good at schedules and prints and vans. It believed it could define reality by repeating it. Then bombs shook ceilings, hunger crossed tracks. An editor filled a paper with pictures and sold out a morning's run. An artist's book was seized and still survived in one cupboard. A courtroom tried to make the word treason fit, and it didn't. A sailor painted 2 words on a ship and then sent them out on the radio. The machine didn't stop running. It simply stopped deciding what people believed. Scarcity isn't only the absence of goods. It's a signal that rewires your habits. In a famine, a person learns that the gap between enough and nothing can be one market stall's empty basket. Afterward, behaviours that look excessive, storing more rice than a family could eat in a month, labelling jars with dates, buying 2 of a staple when one would do, aren't irrational. Their memory turned into routine. The brain uses small cues, an empty shelf, a sudden price change, to wake up an old readiness plan. That's why a single small room can carry the story more honestly than 1,000 speeches. The propaganda machine targeted the present tense. The pantry works in the future tense. It says very quietly, not again. The cell fades, the stored rice stays.